For 73 years, the world's most famous shipwreck was completely, utterly lost. In this explainer, we're going to dig into how a secret Cold War mission and a brilliant, game-changing idea finally solved one of the greatest mysteries of all time, the hunt for the Titanic. You know, this is the question that stumped everyone for decades. The Titanic sent out a distress call. It gave its exact coordinates. The rescue ship, the Carpathia, found the lifeboats pretty much right where they were supposed to be. So why on earth couldn't anyone find a nearly 900-foot-long ship sitting on the bottom of the ocean? Just think about that gap. From the moment it slipped beneath the waves in 1912, all the way to its discovery in 1985, the Titanic was just gone. For over 7 decades, finding it seemed completely impossible. So what made it so unsolvable? Well, first off, that distress call, it came out about 2 hours before the ship actually went under. In all that time, it was still drifting. And then, as it plunged 2.5 miles down, powerful, totally unknown ocean currents grabbed it and dragged it even further off course. This created a massive, pitch-black search area. It was a huge problem. Okay, so decades go by. It wasn't until after 2 world wars, more than 40 years later, that technology really started to catch up. New tools like sonar, which were developed for naval warfare, finally gave explorers a fighting chance. And that's when the first serious attempts to find the wreck really began. The first real shot was in 1953, and the method was, well, it was kind of crude. They were literally dropping dynamite and then mapping the echoes. Yeah, it was way too imprecise. They found nothing. Fast forward a couple of decades, and a young marine geologist named Robert Ballard gives it a try. He's got what was then state-of-the-art tech, a camera sled on this super long drill pipe. But it was a total disaster. The pipe snapped, sending all of his expensive equipment crashing to the seafloor. Ballard had to go home, completely defeated. So with the scientific community kind of licking its wounds, the race to find the Titanic gets a new and very different kind of explorer, an eccentric Texas oil tycoon by the name of Jack Grimm. And when I say eccentric, I am not kidding. Grimm had already bankrolled expeditions to find Noah's Ark, the Loch Ness Monster, and even Bigfoot. The guy loved a good spectacle, and for him, finding the Titanic would be the ultimate show. It gets even crazier. For his Titanic expedition, Grimm actually brought a monkey named Titan on board. Why? Well, he claimed the monkey could point to the wreck's location on a map. The serious scientists he'd hired were, as you can imagine, furious. They gave him an ultimatum. It is either them or the monkey. Grimm, very reluctantly, ended up leaving the monkey behind. So his team used a pretty standard search method called mowing the lawn. Basically, you tow a sonar device behind the ship, moving back and forth in these long overlapping lines, mapping anything unusual. But they were just plagued by problems. Their equipment for detecting metal, it was broken. And to top it off, they were hammered by just terrible weather. But despite all the chaos, Grimm's team had a huge realization. They figured out that the lifeboats were found much farther east than anyone expected. Their theory? The Titanic's crew hadn't accounted for a time change when they calculated their position. It meant the distress coordinates were wrong. The real search area was a massive 1,500 square mile rectangle. And on his very last expedition, they got a hit. A camera captured an image of something that looked, well, tantalizingly like a ship's propeller. Grimm was convinced he'd found it. But their time ran out. They had to go home, and he could never, ever find that spot again. The mystery was still unsolved. So while Jack Grimm is out there chasing this phantom propeller, remember Robert Ballard, the scientist from that failed 1977 mission? Well, he was quietly playing a completely different game, securing a secret and powerful new advantage all his own. He developed this brand new piece of tech called Argo. Now, this thing was a total game changer. See, with the old technology, you had to bring film back up to the surface to be developed. But Argo's cameras sent a live video feed directly to the ship. For the first time ever, explorers could see the ocean floor in real time. So, how did he get the money for this revolutionary tech? Well, this is where the story takes a secret Cold War-era turn. Ballard cut a deal with the U.S. Navy. They agreed to fund Argo, but finding the Titanic, that was just a cover story. His real mission was to secretly map the wrecks of 2 lost American nuclear submarines. And it was on this top-secret mission while he was studying those submarine wrecks that Ballard had the single biggest aha moment of the entire 73-year search. See, up until this point, everyone, and I mean everyone, was doing the exact same thing. They were looking for the ship itself. They were trying to find one single object in this vast, dark expanse. It was a true needle in a haystack. But while he was studying those submarine wrecks, Ballard noticed something. They didn't just sink in one piece. They left a massive trail of lighter debris that got carried by the currents, kind of like the tail of a comet. And suddenly it clicked. He had this revolutionary new theory. Stop looking for the needle, look for the haystack. Find the huge debris field, and it would lead you straight to the wreck. So, in 1985, after he'd finished his secret mission for the Navy, Ballard finally got his chance. With only a small window of time left, he teamed up with a French expedition to put his new theory to the test. The pressure was absolutely immense. The French team went first, using that old mowing the lawn sonar method for weeks, and they found nothing. Absolutely nothing. By the time it was Ballard's turn, he had just 12 days left to prove his crazy theory or go home empty-handed all over again. Ballard's team didn't even bother with the sonar. They focused completely on Argo's live video feed, working in shifts around the clock. For days, it was just nothing, an endless, monotonous seascape. Then, in the dead of night, the exhausted watch crew noticed something different. The shapes on the screen weren't rocks anymore. They were man-made. They were just glued to the monitors as this massive, unmistakable shape drifted into view. It was one of the Titanic's enormous boilers. Ballard was woken from his bunk. They had done it. By looking for the debris field, they had found the Titanic. After 73 long years, the hunt was finally over. But that initial celebration on board, it faded pretty quickly. As the reality of what they'd found really sank in, the mood turned somber. They held a moment of silence right there on the deck, honoring the more than 1,500 souls who were lost in the disaster. Following that debris trail, they soon found the two main sections of the ship. It had broken apart violently as it sank, and the bow and stern landed nearly half a mile apart from each other. And in one last incredible twist, they realized they'd found it just 3,300 feet from the exact spot where the French team had given up and turned off their equipment. So the world's most famous shipwreck was found not just by new technology, but through a secret Cold War mission and a brilliant change in perspective. And the discovery itself raises this huge question that people are still debating today. Is the Titanic a gravesite that should be preserved as a museum, or is it a treasure chest just waiting to be salvaged?